Good morning, Pat. Are you able to hear me?
Yes, I am. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Hold just a moment.
All right.
Good morning, Pat.
Good morning, Lane.
How are you?
Waking up.
Yes. My first cup of coffee here. I was thinking, when we have to meet in person, I have to really get up.
Okay.
I'm glad it's electric. That's great. You don't get to smell the fumes.
That's right. Neither does he.
Here we have 1 minute to kick off here. So, okay. Morning Supervisor. We are about to get started. I think, I don't know why I'm on two screens. Let's go ahead and call the meeting to order.
Madam Chair, before we start, I just want to let the commissioners know that we do not have the ability to look at a gallery view from our monitors. For some reason, it's locked up here. So please bear with us when we're trying to figure out votes and who's speaking.
Okay, got it. I see I'm on two screens. That shouldn't be the case, but that's okay. Maybe it's my computer. Okay, do we have a quorum, Ms. Beltran?
Yes, we do.
Thank you and good morning.
Good
So I'm
morning.
going to call the meeting to order. We'll do roll call in a moment, but I'll ask for Ms. Freeman to lead us in the pledge, if you would be so kind. Elaine, are you able to do that? Can you lead us in the pledge?
Yes.
Sorry.
Please stand, hand over your heart. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, we're going to have a roll call now. Ms. Beltran?
Okay. Commissioner Freeman. Commissioner Freeman?
Here.
Commissioner Parks?
Here.
Commissioner Parvin?
Here.
Commissioner Richards?
Here.
Commissioner Rooney?
Here.
Chair Ramirez?
I'm here.
Alternate Commissioner Zaragoza?
Here.
So we're here, right? Okay. Let's proceed. I think I am the chair. I heard Ms. Beltran try to give it back to
Did I miss
Mary Ann,
you?
but no, that's not going to work.
Excuse me, Chair Ramirez.
It's early. It's early. No problem. So now we're going to go to agenda review. Are we going to have anyone asked to pull anything or change the order? I see the gallery. I don't see anybody raising their hand or nodding yes. So we will. Do we need a motion on this, Ms. Beltran? We just proceed.
No, we do not. We do not need a motion.
All right, so we'll just go ahead. The agenda stays as it is set forth. And this is the time for public comment. It's an opportunity for members of the public to address the commission on any subject matter within the commission's jurisdiction. I see somebody joining us. Is that David Ross in his vehicle? Welcome, David. So do we need to read, I know in other organizations, we have to read the long instructions to how to comment. Do we have to do that, Mr. Loma or Ms. Beltran? I don't remember.
We do not.
Okay, so do we have any members of the public who wish to comment on items not on our agenda?
No, we do not.
We do not. Okay, so we'll proceed. We have now at item 6 is the consent calendar. And I'd like to know what the pleasure is of the commissioners. Anybody would like to pull any item or comment or make changes?
I'll move approval of the consent calendar.
I'll second.
Thank you. So that was Ms. Freeman making the motion, and I believe Ms. Parvin seconding. And Ms. Rooney, Commissioner Rooney, you have a comment?
I do. I just want to reiterate, and I did ask it at the last meeting, but it didn't appear in the minutes here, that accepting and agreeing, voting to receive and file does not equal consent of the content of the agenda item. So I just want to, just because it's on a consent here doesn't mean that if it's receive and file that you agree to the content of the item. So just want to clarify that as we move forward.
I'll ask, just for clarity, our council to comment on that. Is Mr. Boada present?
I am. Good morning. And yes, I can confirm that an action to receive and file information is, as I said, purely informational and does not indicate any agreement by either the full commission or any commissioner with regard to the
Okay,
content.
terrific. So I hope that clarifies it.
Chair, could we put it in the actual written minutes this one time to have that clarification from our council?
Ms. Beltran, Mr. Boada, comment?
Well, the contents of the minutes are at the discretion of the commission. So it would be up to you to decide whether to include or not include that statement.
Commission policies
I-
provide for just action minutes, but again, if it's up to the commission and you would like us to add those to the minutes, we certainly can.
I'd like to propose we do that just to satisfy the commissioner.
And I would second that.
Okay, thank you. Well, I don't know that it took a motion, but just the direction, would that be okay, Mr. Boada? Mr. Loma?
Certainly. Yes, that's correct.
Okay, so you have the direction of the commissioners. I don't see anyone objecting to that. So I don't think we needed a motion, did we?
It's just to correct the minutes that, is on the consent calendar.
Clarification. Okay, I think we can move on. So we had a motion and a second.
We
for
have
the
a vote, right? Yeah.
Yes, we have a motion by Commissioner Freeman, a second by Commissioner Parvin. So I think we can take the vote. And I think Ms. Beltran asked for patience because they're not able to, it's a little difficult. So Ms. Beltran, please proceed.
Commissioner Bill De La Pena? Commissioner Bill De La Pena?
She's indicating yes, but she can't get unmuted.
Okay.
Okay.
Yes.
Commissioner
Someday.
Freeman?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay.
Commissioner Freeman?
Great.
Commissioner Freeman? Are you muted?
She did indicate yes, Ms. Beltran.
Thank you.
She took herself off mute for a moment. I heard it.
Yes.
Commissioner
Said
Parks?
yes.
Yes.
Commissioner Parvin?
Yes.
Commissioner Richards?
Yes.
Commissioner Rooney? Is that a yes? Commissioner Rooney?
Yes.
Thank you. Chair Ramirez?
Yes. Okay. All right. Thank you very much. Now we're going to go on to item 11. which is LAFCO 20-09S, Bell Canyon Community Services District Sphere of Influence Review and/or Update. And it's recommended the commission, A, adopt the resolution, et cetera, et cetera. Consider, and B, continue consideration of LAFCO 20-09S Sphere of Influence Review, et cetera. So, Mr. Loma.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning, Commissioners. This is agenda item number 11. It is LAFCO 2009S. As you recall, this, I'm sorry, we're getting some feedback here. Do you hear that feedback?
When we were in the boardroom, if you have more than one microphone on at the same time, that can happen.
All right, yeah, we're getting, sorry, Commissioners. Do we have any other mics on? Yeah, there's nothing in the dais control room. Is there a reason why we're getting feedback? Please bear with us a moment.
It might also be the volume's just really high there on your microphones.
Right, well, it's not working to turn mine down. Okay, I will keep talking. He's trying to address it as we're talking. So, okay, as the commission probably recalls, this item was originally considered by the commission in September of last year, and it was continued for 6 months to today's meeting. So I'll be brief because we went over this last time. Pursuant to LAFCO law, the commission was required to determine a sphere of influence for each city and special district before 2008, and then every 5 years thereafter, the commission must, as necessary, review and update each sphere of influence. And prior to or in conjunction with a sphere of influence update, LAFCO is required to conduct a municipal service review, again, pursuant to LAFCO law. And we did prepare a draft municipal service review for this sphere of influence review and or update that the commission considered again 6 months ago. Briefly, the Bell Canyon Community Services District is located in the southeast corner of the county. It's accessible really only through the city of Los Angeles. The CSD is approximately 1,677 acres. It generally aligns with the community of Bell Canyon, which consists of 672 single-family residences and a total of about 795 residential parcels. And the community's gates do restrict public access into the community and thus into the CSD as well. As you'll see from this map, the district boundaries are in yellow and the sphere of influence is coterminous with those boundaries. So I'll provide a little bit of background, and again, I'll be brief. As I mentioned, on September 16th of last year, the commission considered the draft municipal service review and related recommendations on the sphere of influence. However, based on oral and written testimony from the CSD that the MSR contained numerous errors, factual inaccuracies, and deficiencies, the commission continued the matter for 6 months and directed staff to work with the CSD to address the alleged errors and deficiencies in the municipal service review. On September 29th of last year, after staff and legal counsel reviewed all of the materials and all the testimony provided by the CSD, staff informed the CSD that the draft MSR, in fact, does not contain the errors and deficiencies as alleged by the CSD. And staff wrote a letter requesting that the CSD provide any additional information for our consideration. The additional information came in the form of a letter submitted on November 4th of last year by the CSD's legal counsel. This is a second letter alleging pretty much the same errors and factual inaccuracies and deficiencies in the draft MSR that were alleged prior. Following that letter, soon after, the CSD president requested a meeting with staff to discuss the, I don't think they can hear me now. They can. Okay. So the CSD
hear
president
you.
requested a meeting to discuss the district's position as relayed in that November 4th letter. So in December of last year, LAFCO staff and LAFCO legal counsel twice met with the CSD president and their legal counsel. And I just want to say that these were both positive and productive meetings. And staff really does want to thank the president, Dennis Roy, and their legal counsel, Pam Lee, for their approach and accommodation and willing to work with, through these issues with LAFCO staff. At those meetings, the CSD president and legal counsel were essentially persuaded, largely, not entirely, that the MSR does not contain the errors, inaccuracies, and deficiencies as previously alleged. And the outcome of that meeting was that the district was going to take a different position on the MSR, and they would follow up with a subsequent letter basically outlining the outcome of those meetings and taking a different position. This letter came on February 25th. That should be 2022 this year. And that letter, this was submitted that it shall act to supersede the district's position as previously stated in its prior letter dated November 4th to the LAFCO Commission. So it is this letter that we are now responding to. As you'll see in the staff report, it's this new position from the CSD that is the subject of the staff report and, of course, this presentation. So the first recommendation, I'm sorry?
Just to clarify on that slide previous, it did say 2020.
Yeah,
no,
that's
2000.
yes, that's an error
So
on
is
my
that
part.
typo? Just for the record, anybody watching this later in eternity knows that it was a boo-boo. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. So the first recommendation, as Chair Ramirez stated, was to adopt a resolution accepting the municipal service review. And I'll talk a little bit about that. So again, the draft municipal service review has 6 sections, and we are required to have these sections as the basis for the determinations that the commission is required to adopt. They are background, profile, growth and population projections, review municipal services, the relationship between the CSD and the HOA, and then of course the written determinations. Because the district's February 25th letter focuses on the following 2 sections of the MSR, those are what we were going to focus on in this presentation, and that's what the staff report focuses on. They are a review of the municipal services, and this is just a discussion of both the authorized and unauthorized services, and then the relationship between the CSD and the HOA. My presentation will be a summary of what's in the MSR and basically just a brief summary of the district's new position regarding what's in the MSR. So we'll start with the review of municipal services. These are the authorized powers and services of the CSD. They are authorized to provide rubbish recycling and green waste removal, enhanced traffic patrol under the provisions of a contract with the California Highway Patrol, meaning outside of a contract with the Highway Patrol, they have no authorized power to provide traffic enforcement or traffic control. Emergency medical advanced life support services under the provisions of a contract with the City of Los Angeles Fire Department, here again. Therefore, outside of a contract with the City of Los Angeles Fire Department, the CSD has no authority to provide emergency medical services. They have the power to organize, promote, conduct, and advertise community recreation programs, provide security services, including but not limited to burglar and fire alarm services to protect lives and property, and graffiti abatement. Now, according to the district's February 25th letter, the CSD now acknowledges that these are its authorized services, and it is limited to expending funds on and or providing only these services. But I do want to talk briefly about those services just because this is part of the MSR. Regarding rubbish recycling and green waste removal, the CSD does contract with a private service provider. The contract is funded by property tax revenue generated from within the CSD, and it provides for standard residential trash collection services. Regarding enhanced traffic patrol under the provisions of a contract with the California Highway Patrol, there is no contract with the Highway Patrol, and there hasn't been since 2013. And therefore the CSD is not providing this service. Regarding emergency medical services under a contract with the City of Los Angeles Fire Department, here again, there is no contract between the CSD and the Los Angeles Fire Department, and there hasn't been for many years, and therefore the CSD is not providing the service and has not been providing the service for some time. Regarding the service, the organize, promote, conduct, and advertise community recreation programs, it's the community's HOA that organizes, promotes, conducts, staffs, and advertises the community recreation programs. At least this was the case prior to the pandemic when these programs were stopped. The HOA then passes the costs to the CSD. So the CSD is actually providing the funding to pay for these, however they're being organized by the HOA. Since 2018, the CSD has budgeted $270,000 on these programs and expended over $100,000 on them. Now, CSD law and Recreation and Park District law, both of which must be followed to implement this power, provide that recreation services may be provided either, they have to be provided via, if they're not being provided by the district itself, the only other option is that they be provided under a contract with a public agency. Again, here there are no contracts or agreements between the CSD HOA and the HOA, and of course the HOA is not a public agency. Therefore, the CSD has no legal authority to receive recreation programs from or provide them through the HOA, and therefore the CSD does not provide community recreation programs. Security services, the CSD has adopted no policies, procedures, or ordinances regarding security services since they were approved by LAFCO several years ago, and there's no dedicated security personnel or trained personnel performing this task. They've budgeted and expended no funds on security services for many years, therefore the CSD is not providing security services, and the same applies to graffiti abatement. So the authorized services that are being provided are rubbish recycling and green waste removal. The remaining 5 authorized services are not being provided. So now we want to talk about the unauthorized power and services as discussed in the municipal service review. These are in relation to traffic enforcement, emergency medical training, parks and recreational facilities, community emergency response team or CERT, fire and emergency related services, and school bus stop. These are all latent powers, and as described in the staff report at the previous meeting, a latent power is one that CSD has no legal authority to exercise or expend funds on unless they've been approved by LAFCO. So we'll start with traffic enforcement. As explained in the MSR, the CSD has expended since 2015 over $62,000 on traffic enforcement services. This includes a $50,000 grant to the HOA for traffic enforcement equipment installed at the community's front gate. And I do want to stress here that the term grant for this $50,000 comes directly from the CSD. CSD Vice President and General Manager characterized the giving of this money to the HOA as a grant. And the budget for this $50,000 was characterized for traffic enforcement equipment. There was also the purchase of a decoy traffic enforcement car. The intent was to give the false impression that the CSD was authorized to provide traffic enforcement. Now, originally this was a surplus police vehicle that was intended to look like a police vehicle, again, to give that false impression. However, the county sheriff, once they found out that the district was doing this, they contacted LAFCO. We informed them that they did not have the authority to provide traffic enforcement. So the CSD was directed to repaint the vehicle so it did not look like a police vehicle. So the car was painted, however, it was then labeled as a state of California vehicle, and then it was being used by the HOA for traffic enforcement. This was all noted in the MSR. So according to the February 25th letter, the CSD now acknowledges that it does not have legal authority to provide traffic patrol and enforcement itself, essentially outside of a contract with the CHP. According to the letter, the CSD will no longer conduct traffic patrol or enforcement activities or expend funds and resources thereon. The state of California markings have been removed from the decoy vehicle, and the general manager was directed to dispose of this vehicle. Emergency medical training. Since 2015, the CSD expended $4,000 for CPR training for community members. Here again, according to the February 25th letter, the CSD now acknowledges that it has no legal authority to provide or fund emergency medical training itself. It will no longer provide or fund these services itself, and any future medical training will be under a contract with the Los Angeles Fire Department. Parks and recreation facilities. The CSD owns no recreation facilities. There is a community park and hiking trails owned by the HOA. Since 2015, the CSD has budgeted over $900,000 for the maintenance of and improvements to these HOA-owned facilities, and has actually given the HOA over $100,000 in grants. Again, the term grants comes from the CSD. In 2020, the CSD leased the community park from the HOA and budgeted several $100,000 to make park improvements. The CSD now acknowledges that it does not have the legal authority to acquire, construct, improve, maintain, or operate recreation facilities, including parks and open space, as is explained in the MSR. The CSD will no longer fund or make improvements to recreation facilities. The BCCSD will no longer grant or give funds to the HOA for recreation facilities. The board has approved the termination of the parks and trails lease, again, because they don't have the authority to acquire parks or open space. And the CSD will pursue the activation of the latent power to provide this service. However, the CSD will not utilize the HOA for any future maintenance or operation of parks or open space should the latent power be approved. Community Emergency Response Team. The CSD has budgeted $51,000 for CERT services over 4 years, and they expended over $6,000 in that 4-year window. This follows LAFCO staff informing the district that it did not have the authority to provide CERT services. However, the funds that were budgeted, these close to $51,000, the funds budgeted and expended for CERT were not reflected in the annual audits done for those years. In addition to that, there was a number of discrepancies between the budget, the audits, and the monthly financial reports, and it is unclear on what happened to this $51,000, what it was actually expended on. So it appears the CSD acknowledges, they don't directly acknowledge this issue in their letter, but it does appear that they acknowledge that it does not have the authority to provide or fund CERT services. And because this is not addressed in the district's letter, staff does recommend that should the commission continue this item as is recommended, that it encourage the CSD to develop financial management policies and procedures to address these financial issues and ensure compliance with public finance law. We would also encourage that the commission adopt policies regarding the issuance of credit cards to board members. This is a rather unusual practice for a district to give board members credit cards, actual public money credit cards, and they should have some policies regulating that, as well as the personal use of public resources by board members such as CSD vehicles. Regarding fire and emergency-related services, the district purchased a vehicle equipped with emergency tools and equipment. They do refer to this as the emergency vehicle. This was in 2019. The board authorized the pursuit of $325,000 in CAL FIRE grants in 2019. And the district actually sponsored a local fire safe council in 2020, and it accepted and it administers $37,000 in state grant funds to the fire safe council. The CSD now acknowledges that it does not have the legal authority to provide or fund fire suppression or protection services or other emergency services, nor purchase, use, provide emergency equipment, nor sponsor fire-related councils or apply for, receive, and administer grants for fire-related purposes. According to their letter, the CSD will not pursue any fire-related grants in the future, and the CSD will contact CAL FIRE to inquire about the disbursement of the remaining grant funds in its possession. School bus stop. Here again, according to the information provided from the general manager and the previous vice president, the district actually owns, manages, operates, and maintains property for purposes of a school bus stop. This has been clarified that it does own the property and provides maintenance of the property, but it does not maintain the bus stop that's located on that property. The CSD now acknowledges that it does not have the authority to own and operate a bus stop, which again here, as I said, occupies a portion of CSD-owned property. So the CSD will lease the portion of the property with the bus stop to the HOA, which will allow the HOA to improve and maintain the bus stop. Now I want to talk about the section in the draft MSR regarding the relationship between the CSD and the homeowners association. So as explained in detail in the MSR, regarding the legal authority for the CSD to grant funds to the HOA. The CSD grants funds to the HOA to provide recreation programs, recreation facilities, and traffic enforcement, as we just discussed. The CSD has no legal authority to provide recreation programs to the HOA. The CSD has no legal authority to provide traffic enforcement or maintain recreation facilities. Therefore, the CSD had no legal authority to provide grants to the HOA. And you can refer to these as something other than grants, whether they're gifts or reimbursements, it's all the same. It's public money going to the private HOA. So according to the letter, the CSD now acknowledges that it has no legal authority to grant or give funds to the HOA. The CSD will no longer give or grant funds to the HOA or provide reimbursements to the HOA of any kind. The CSD, in addition, will not utilize the HOA or its staff in any capacity in the future. Regarding public records and meetings, according to the MSR, the HOA, well, as we know, is not a public agency. Therefore, the use of CSD funds granted or given to the HOA are not subject to public disclosure laws. In addition, the CSD board meetings occur behind the community's front gates. The public is prevented from attending the meetings or accessing posted agendas in violation of the Brown Act. Now, again, here, this part of the MSR, this was confirmed by the general manager and the previous vice president that the public was not allowed to come through the gate to attend these meetings. According to the...
Can I ask
Sorry?
Could I ask a question here?
Yes.
Mr. Loma, the public means any member of the public, not just the residents of this area?
That is correct. Both access to the posted agendas and physical access to the meetings must be provided to any member of the public.
And I would assume they are, this is a little bit off topic, but I assume they may be in person now, but have been virtual?
They have been virtual. However, as the Brown Act stands now, even though if they're entirely virtual meetings, then they may be attended virtually by the public if the public is not allowed or nobody's allowed in the chambers. However, if the public is allowed in the chambers, then all of the public must be allowed in the meeting room where the meetings are being conducted.
Thank you.
So according to the February 25th letter, the CSD will no longer give grant funds to the HOA, reimburse the HOA, or utilize the HOA or its staff in any capacity. And regarding the Brown Act, the CSD has installed a bulletin board outside the community's front gate in which meeting agendas are to be posted with the intent of allowing the public access to the meetings, or to the agendas, I should say. And the board meeting agendas are to include instructions to allow the public access to the community's gate to attend the CSD board meetings. I would like to talk a little bit about that bulletin board. The bulletin board where these agenda meetings are to be posted is about a quarter mile outside the community's front gate, right on the county line with Los Angeles County. It's along a 45-mile-per-hour two-lane road. It contains no signage. It contains no lighting. There is no sidewalk or safe pedestrian access. It's in a posted no parking area, as you can see by this picture that was provided by a resident of Bell Canyon. So this location appears inherently dangerous and therefore inaccessible to the public and probably does not meet the requirements of the Brown Act. Again, if the commission does continue consideration of the sphere of influence update, we recommend that the bulletin board be located in a safe and accessible location. Conflicts of interest. Two CSD board members are also HOA board members. In 2013, the district attorney advised that the appearance of impropriety created by their dual directorship should be eliminated. However, since 2013, no action has been taken by the CSD. To address this, according to the February 25th letter, the CSD is to adopt a conflict of interest code, a policy requiring recusal on any financial matters with the HOA, though such matters are likely to be eliminated given that they will no longer utilize the HOA in any capacity, and recommend that the HOA adopt policies limiting the number of HOA board members who serve on the CSD board to 2. Now, it's unclear.
Mr.
Yes?
Forma, Commissioner Rooney has a question.
Okay.
Thank you. So on this matter here, I went back and read the DA's conclusion. And I mean, I'll just read it verbatim here. The DA concluded that it was aware of no facts at the time which would constitute an unlawful conflict of interest for the individuals serving as members of both the Bell Canyon and HOA Board of Directors. So, I mean, if the DA concluded that there was no unlawful conflict of interest, then why would LAFCO be recommending this action here?
Well, we're not recommending this action here. We were inquiring why no action had been taken. And the district's attorney's conclusions came out in 2013. At that time, based on the record, there was not grants of public money being given to the HOA. Had that occurred at that time, I don't know if the DA's recommendation would have been different as far as determining there's not a conflict of interest. We're not here accusing that there's a conflict of interest, but there is an appearance of such, if not a real conflict of interest, given that the board is approving the grants of public funds to the private HOA.
Well, I guess that goes to my other question is that the MSRs are supposed to be reviewed every 5 years, right? And so if this was in 2013, why didn't this come up in the subsequent MSR review that was reviewed in 2015, right? It seems like it should have been addressed during that MSR, before. But again, I mean, I go back to if the DA concluded this, that there was no unlawful conflict of interest, without an update of their opinion, that opinion stands, right? So that's where I'm confused as to why we're getting involved in that where the DA said there was no unlawful conflict.
Well, it stands as of 2013, and it's based on the evidence that they had before them in 2013. So as far as we can tell, prior to 2013, as I said, there was not the unlawful grants of public money going to the HOA. And, board members who approve it on the CSD then spend it on the HOA. So as I said, the 2013 district attorney was based on what was going on in 2013. Things have changed since then. But they do conclude that if there's not a real conflict of interest, there certainly is an appearance of impropriety created by their dual directorship. And there was a potential for it to result in a real conflict of interest.
I see Commissioner Freeman has a question.
Sorry, I had that same question because it would seem that the district attorney's position would stand, and it's a small community of people, and so any conflict would be obvious to the people of the neighborhood. But since there isn't any legal reason not to allow it, it's only for appearance's sake, then maybe we shouldn't take such a hard position on this.
Well, again, the district attorney's 2013 letter addressed the situation prior to 2013. It does not address future actions that have happened since. So the 2013 district attorney's position applies only to what was going on prior to 2013. So
There hasn't been any need for an updated position from the district attorney?
I don't know. I mean, I don't know what the district attorney may be doing with, if anything. That would be a question for the district attorney. But be that as it may, the district attorney recommended that this could be an appearance of impropriety created by their dual directorship. They concluded that in 2013. And now, subsequent to that, the CSD started giving public money to the HOA. Now, whether that rose to the level of, or ever was referred back to the district attorney to look into, I don't know. That would be a question for the district attorney. But regardless, we are not here recommending that the district do anything specific. It's up to the district to address this issue to the degree that they see fit. And they saw fit to commit to adopting this conflict of interest code and policies and ceasing any further interactions with the HOA.
Thank you.
So, yeah, and then it's
Vice Chair-
I'm sorry?
Vice Chair Richards.
Oh, sure.
Looks like Vice Chair Richards has a question. Is that correct? No? Okay, you're unmuted, so that's what it looked like to me. All right.
So,
Just
Okay.
to clarify, the district has pledged or promised or indicated they're going to adopt a conflict of interest code, correct?
Right. In addition to a policy requiring the recusal of financial matters from those directors who also serve on the HOA board. And then they want to recommend that the HOA is to adopt policies limiting the number of HOA board members who served on the CSD board to 2. However, given that, it's unclear why in February, I think it might have been January of this year, the CSD board appointed a third HOA board member to fill a vacancy on the CSD board. So it seems a little bit of a contradictory approach there. So with that, the recommendation A, again, is to adopt the resolution to accept the municipal service review. Now, based on the district's willingness to take these steps and these measures to address the issues identified in the municipal service review, excuse me, staff is recommending that the commission allow the district adequate time to implement all of these measures. So we are going to recommend that the commission continue consideration of the sphere of influence review and or update for 1 year. So this will be for March 2023. Staff will be, if the commission does go along with this recommendation, LAFCO staff will be in communication with the district throughout and just ensuring that they are implementing what they indicate that they will. And then come back to the commission in 1 year with a recommendation on the sphere of influence. And that concludes staff's presentation. Thank you.
Commissioner Parks has her hand up. And Commissioner
Yeah, just a clarification. You had that one slide regarding the CSD and recreational services and facilities. And I believe you indicated that the CSD will no longer, or acknowledges that they cannot provide that. Acknowledges that it does not have legal authority to acquire, construct, improve, maintain, or operate recreation facilities. But in the March 15th letter from Pam Lee, it states otherwise. And I'm wondering if you can, if that statement still applies, that they do acknowledge it, because in their March 15th letter that we just received, it says that they will be, that the delivery of BCSD authorized and managed recreational programs is how she refers to it.
Right, so the facility, the authority to provide parks and recreation facilities is separate and apart from the authority to provide recreation programs. So the CSD acknowledges, I mean, to the degree that they are willing to, they certainly acknowledged to us in the meetings, and it appears in the February 25th letter that they don't have this, the authority to provide these recreation facilities. And they agree that in order for them to do so, they must come to LAFCO to activate that latent power to do so. So to me, that is an acknowledgement that they don't have that power. The power to provide recreation programs, they do have that authority. However, it is very clear in CSD law, which refers to Recreation and Park District law, that they cannot provide these services through the homeowners association. So they acknowledge that in the letter, they acknowledge that in their February letter, they acknowledge that in the meetings, that it is very clear that the HOA doesn't, providing these services through the HOA does not comply with these two bodies of law. Yeah, I was a little bit confused by the latest letter, whereas in one hand, they seem to acknowledge the limitations, because they certainly acknowledge what their approved services are. So therefore, every other service is a latent power. So to take the position that they want to address the items in the MSR, and they agree to address the items in the MSR, but then take another position that they're not required to, but they're just doing it to move along, is a little bit contradictory.
I guess that was my point, is that you referenced several times that they acknowledge something that this letter seems that they don't acknowledge, that what they're doing is against the law there. Another point that you raised too was regarding credit cards that the CSD members have. Did you look at what those credit card expenses were, and were they also were they within the scope of what a CSD could spend credit on?
No, primarily because the financial documents did not list anything about credit card usage and the expenses going to the credit card. So there was no line item budget. I saw no line item in the monthly financials about where this money, how much was being spent on these credit cards. So it was difficult, if not impossible, for LAFCO staff in its role to figure out how much, where it was being spent, and on what. And that's why there needs to be policies, regulating that.
Do you have more questions, Commissioner Parks?
Not at this time, thank you.
So we'll go to Commissioner Freeman.
Yes. First, I would like to thank the CSDA board for responding and bringing in legal counsel. I appreciate that. But I need some clarification. For instance, can the CSD hire recreation, say for a special event, like a bouncer and music, and can, under their authority, can they contract directly with recreation providers and maybe reserve the HOA park for a community event? Because there has to be a way for the community to have recreation activities. So do they have the authority to contract with like a music group or a bouncing group and with outside contractors?
Yes, most likely. But the CSD would have to do that itself. What's happening now is they are relying on the HOA staff. The HOA staff.
I understand that. I just want to know if they have the authority to hire directly people to put on recreation programs.
Right, yes. And they indicate that they are looking into hiring staff themselves who work directly for the CSD that will be the one to organize that and enter into the contracts and such. So yes, they can do that.
So in their charter, they cannot hire, say, a private ambulance service to come in and service their area as needed.
Under the current authorized services, that's correct.
So they have really limited abilities, it seems to me, to implement what they're chartered to do.
Well,
they cannot.
I'm sorry, continue.
My concern is, it seems to me, other special districts can hire outside security without it being a government agency, can hire, if there's an event that requires that kind of service, and can hire other types of companies to do things for them as a special district, just like a county or a city can. So you're saying they can't do that?
Right. Every different type of special district has a different principal act. So they're all subject to different laws, different powers, different authorities. However, the thing that is not different is that for every one of those special districts, they have what are called latent powers. And though their principal act says that they have the power to provide this, because they're latent, they must go first to LAFCO to get authorization to provide those services. So a district that has authorization to provide those services without limitations, say that it has to be a public agency, they may do that. The CSD law is very specific regarding public agencies and latent powers. So the CSDs, generally speaking, have they have the ability to provide just about every service that a city does, absent land use authority. But they're all subject to LAFCO review and approval. They're all latent until they're activated by LAFCO. So if the Bell Canyon CSD wants to provide fire protection services or ambulance services, there's a mechanism that they would have to go through to get authorization to do that. But that mechanism is there.
On the recreation, would they have to come to LAFCO every time they wanted to have an event, or do they just come once and get the latent power?
For the recreation programs, they already have that power. They just need to provide it consistent with the CSD Principal Act and Parks and Recreation District law. So once they do that, LAFCO, there's no reason for LAFCO to get involved. If they're following the laws that apply, LAFCO's out of the picture on that. Regarding recreation facilities, they do not have the authority to acquire or maintain facilities. So they would have to come to LAFCO to get approval of that power before they provide it.
Okay. I think what really is a little frustrating to me is that you have a very isolated community, and the CSD and the HOA has to work together for the benefit of their community. So it seems rather complicated in order for them to provide the services that probably the community needs. I understand what you're saying, Kai. It's just they are in control of their community and they want it to be a good community. And so they're trying to do these things to make it a better community. And in the long run, it's difficult for them to do that.
But there is a path for them to do that, I see. Commissioner Richards.
Yes, Kai, what happens to those funds that were spent without authorization or the authority to do so? Listed $1.4 million for capital expenditures over a period of years. That's the first question. Second question I have is, can the district operate with a deficit? It's indicated that they're operating 5 out of 6 years is a significant deficit. Is that allowed for the CSD?
Regarding your first question, LAFCO doesn't have an enforcement role. The MSR can report these issues and bring them public, and the MSRs and the issues will inform LAFCO on future actions over which LAFCO has authority. So LAFCO does not have the authority to make the HOA reimburse the CSD or the CSD seek reimbursement. That is outside LAFCO's authority and would be up to other entities to do so. Regarding your second question, the CSD has about $1.5 million in reserves in the bank. So they can spend, budget to a deficit as long as they have the money to cover it. However, of course, that means that money in the bank is going to be spent down, and they will at some point have to cut funding so they have a balanced budget if they don't have those reserves.
All right, thank you.
Okay. Other commissioners, questions?
I would like to hear if we have any public comments before I make a comment.
Well, I know I do see Ms. Lee, the counsel for the district, online, and I don't know if she's interested in speaking, but I will entertain that. And I would like to ask if there are any other members of the public who'd like to speak at this time.
Chair Ramirez, there are 4 individuals logged on as attendees who have not raised their hand.
Okay.
If they wish to speak, they.
And I'd like to see if Ms. Lee would like to speak.
Yes, we would like to speak very briefly.
Please, sir, identify yourself.
I'm Dennis Roy.
Say again, please.
Can you hear me now? I'm Dennis Roy, President.
Okay.
I'm Dennis Roy, President of the BC CSD, and I'm here today with Pam Lee, our legal counsel.
Thank you.
Pam, do you want to say anything first? Okay. I only wanted to comment on a couple things. I mean, first of all, I wanted to say that we appreciated the opportunity to work with staff and Mr. Luomo. I found that a very productive exchange, and I think we have a good roadmap for going forward. And I appreciate all of their help in getting there, and I look forward to a more active and interactive relationship with LAFCO staff. There are a couple things that came up that I do just want to very briefly comment on. There was a bit of a confusion, and I think it was Commissioner Parks' question to some extent about, in my mind, between recreational activities and recreational facilities. Those are two separate powers, as we've come to see under the CSD law. We do have the existing power to provide recreational activities and events. We intend to continue to do that. As Commissioner Freeman noted, it was easier certainly to coordinate those activities with the HOA because they could provide staff to us that we did not have. But given the issues that's created in terms of whether too much authority was delegated to the HOA, whether it was a completely arm's length transaction at all events, we just decided from the BC CSD perspective that it's better for us to the extent we need private support for specific activities like security, cleanup, provision of the food supplies, et cetera, that, we'll just minimize or eliminate, involvement with the HOA just to avoid those issues. But we certainly intend to continue providing our recreational events and activities as we have done in the past. And we will be using HOA sites for the provision of those activities. The recreational facilities, the LAFCO's position, what at least as communicated through staff is, that required specific activation of a separate latent power. And so, Commissioner Freeman, we are going to go back and we are going to request activation of that latent power so that we can not only provide recreational events and activities, but also we can participate in the improvement of the recreational facilities in the canyon. I think that's a very important service we can provide to the community and we want to provide, and I believe we have a path forward for doing that. The only other comment I would say is that there was a comment about 1.4 million of expenditures. I mean, I think those were budgeted amounts, not expended amounts. And, they were all for purposes at the time that the CSD believed in good faith that it had the authority to do. It understood its community. It read those terms a little broader, if you will, than LAFCO staff has communicated their interpretation of those. But we're willing to work within those constraints, and I think we can with your cooperation and help, I think we can successfully address all of these items. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'll let me go to Commissioner Parvin and then to Commissioner Rooney.
Yeah, I have a question for Mr. Roy. Do you have currently like a list of the latent powers that you are going to be seeking in the near future from LAFCO?
Yes, Commissioner. The only one that we are looking at right now is the recreational facilities power. And we intend to follow up with you on that immediately because we have plans. As you may see from the record, we had entered into a park lease with the HOA where we were going to take control of the park because we're allowed to spend monies ourselves directly, but not indirectly through the HOA, as you heard in the presentation. So we entered into the park lease to acquire direct control over the park. And then we have a plan to improve that under improved facility in the community, which is going to be fantastic. But we need to take a step back. We're going to terminate that park lease. We're going to come in and request activation of that recreational facilities power, and then we will go back and implement that park program. Listening to this today, we may, and Commissioner Freeman, we may come back also, perhaps maybe we would like a little enhancement of our powers on security services or medical services to the community. I think we need to think about that from what we heard today, but we might be requesting something in that regard too.
Okay,
Well,
great.
that's why I was thinking about bundling all these requests. Maybe it would help expedite getting things started for you.
Thank you. That's a great suggestion.
Okay. Commissioner Parks, you had your hand up, but I know Commissioner Rooney wanted to ask a question.
I'll defer.
Thank you.
Mr. Roy, I want to say thank you that you are looking now at proceeding the way all the other CSDs do, which is to first get the authority, if granted, and then move forward with being able to expend in those areas. Really appreciate that. And it is certainly a different tone than previously. The question I have, are you a new member on the CSD?
I became a member in, I think, 2018, I believe it was. I can't remember exactly. I'm sorry, Commissioner. I was not that actively involved. I was just a member of the board, so I was involved, but I wasn't in an executive position. I've been the president of the board in the last, about the last 9 months. So I've gotten more actively involved in this sort of thing within this last year.
Are you aware of the credit cards that the board members have? Do you have one? And do you know what the expenses are? Were there like restaurants and travel, for example, accredited to the credit cards that the CSD had?
To my knowledge, Commissioner, I do not have one, and I do not need one, and I do not want one. To my knowledge, there are two credit cards. One is held by Dennis Zine, our general manager, and he uses that for miscellaneous expenditures, in furtherance of the CSD. And I believe the other credit card is held by our one board member who maintains and our BCCSD, and he's our treasurer. He maintains our BCCSD vehicle and is our treasurer. And he uses it solely for the maintenance of the CSD thing. I have never seen any significant charges, no travel, no acquisition of personal property or that sort of thing. I've not seen the cards abused, and I do think we should have a more formal policy, and we'll discuss it internally. I mean, I don't see the need for all members to have cards. I don't think they have them, and I don't think they will have them.
Okay, I'm glad to hear that you actually review the expenses and they are approved. So.
I do, ma'am.
Thank you. Commissioner Rooney.
I'd like to offer Ms. Lee an opportunity to comment if she's going to comment before I address.
Yes. Thank you, Commissioner Rooney, and thank you, Chair, for allowing us to speak on this item. And we appreciate the LAFCO staff as well as its legal counsel for having entertained us during December through the meetings and working with us to resolve all of these outstanding issues. And I would just like to clarify two additional points that were raised during this presentation. And the first one is with respect to the third HOA member who came on board February 2022. He is no longer an HOA board member. I think he resigned as of November 2021. And when he was appointed to fill the vacancy that was left by, Mr. Glassman, he had made the representations and we reviewed that he is no longer on the HOA board. And those questions were asked during the public meeting when the interviews had occurred. And so when he was appointed, I believe that he had already resigned. And so that is no longer an issue. And so I'd like to make that point of clarification. He had been on the board before, but when he applied and when we had appointed him to the district board, that was no longer a conflict issue at all. And so that's why he was appointed. With respect to the question on providing recreational programs and hiring private parties in furtherance of that. I believe, President Roy had spoken to this issue a little bit, but we'd like to further clarify that to the extent that, the district needs services that are not provided by a public agency, say a rock band, a bounce house, a yoga instructor. Those are authorized services that we can contract with a private party. I don't believe that any other park district, and my firm represents other park districts within the county, they have independent contractors or other private parties to provide such services. And to the extent that the district would like to engage in those services, we can and we will contract with those private parties. And so I don't think that would be an issue for us, because that's not something that another public agency would provide. And we wouldn't go looking towards any other district or facility agency to provide those services.
Thank you.
Excuse me, Chair Ramirez.
Any other commissioner? I'd like to, thank you for being here. And I always appreciate when people get good legal counsel. As an attorney myself, I think it's been very helpful. And appreciate the district's willingness to work in a better way with LAFCO staff. So terrific. So unless commissioners have any other, Commissioner Rooney.
Well, I'd like to comment now that I heard it. So, first of all, I'd like to address the representatives from Bell Canyon specifically. It seems like this process has been highly scrutinized of your agency, and my hope is that this process makes your district stronger and more efficient. That's my hope through this. To me, it seems like I don't know how to say this, so I'm just going to put it out there. I feel like this whole process has been a big family fighting with each other, and that we're airing a lot of dirty laundry, and there's things that aren't germane to the topic of the MSR, and of that I feel uncomfortable and kind of questioning why a lot of things that don't appear germane to me to the MSR, why we're being putting it all in the process here. So my concern is that LAFCO is acting within the authority that we have, in the legal boundaries that we have, and to make sure that we are not overstepping, that we are doing exactly what we should be doing. So given that, I'd like to have a clarification from our legal counsel that everything that we've contained in the MSR, everything that we're asking about, all the recommendations and modifications that we're asking Bell Canyon to do, is that all within the scope and authority of the LAFCO board in a legal framework?
Yes.
Are you asking Mr. Boada or
Mr. Boada?
Yeah, great.
Yes, thank you. Yes, I can confirm that I have reviewed the draft MSR, and it is my view that everything contained in there, all of the determinations, all of the recommendations are fully within LAFCO's authority in conducting a municipal service review.
Thank you.
Can address any specific.
I had a hard time hearing on that. But
Confirmed they were all within the LAFCO guidelines.
all within the LAFCO law. Okay. Okay.
Thank you. I do see I have one attendee who would like to, that was a hand raised, and that's whoever is at the 818 phone number. Ms. Beltran, can you facilitate that? Thank
Yes, the telephone
you. Please
number-
identify yourself. Say your name.
My name is Mickey Davidovich. I'm a Bell Canyon resident, almost 20 years.
Go ahead, please.
I just want to bring the attention that I resent an email about 20 minutes ago. My main concern is we have a lawyer that sits on the CSD, taxpayer, hard-earning money, paying an attorney to massage LAFCO to say that everything will be okay. Don't worry, we'll be okay. I also sent the contract lease agreement between CSD and BCA that clearly against our CCNRs. This is not an attempt, oops, I made a mistake, I'll fix it. This is deliberately attempt to embezzle money. This is deliberately, if you notice, the budget for the park was thousands of dollars more than we just spent $30,000 on artificial grass from our money. What they do is continuously is what they do with our homeowner association problems that we have for many, many years. I think that no lawyer should benefit from their wrongdoing. Of course, she's going to go and say, I'm going to be here for the next 1 year supervising them. She's, for her, it's only money. She's a partner in that firm she works for, and all she cares about the money coming in. Dennis Roy is a lawyer. He's a CSD member. He can run those meetings without getting paid by taxpayers' money. Do you see the absurd in this?
Ms. Davidovich, we hear you, and I think we've got what you're saying. So I'd like to thank you for calling in, and I'd like to move on if we can. Thank you very much. So let's see. I think we don't have any other members of the public who'd like to speak. Any further commissioners? What is the pleasure of the commission? I need a motion here.
I'll move staff's recommendation for 1 year.
Is that a distinction from what is recommended? Just we did agree. The resolution does say we'll continue to be working and taking a look, correct? But 1 year, is that that what you request? Yeah. Okay, can I get a second here?
I'll second.
Thank you. Okay, let's, Mr. Loma, there was, Commissioner Freeman said, let's do this for a year. Can you just say if that's really what you need, less than you need, more than you need?
So is the motion to approve staff's recommendation? If that's the case, that should be sufficient.
Okay, great. Thanks. So we have,
Just for clarification, so the recommendation is to adopt the MSR, including the statements of determination, and continue the sphere of influence review for 1 year. That's what the recommendation is, right?
That's correct.
Yes, that's correct.
Oh, sorry.
I have a follow-up question. So in the interim, would we be asking for them to move their bulletin board into a more primary, easily accessible area through this motion?
Is that a question to staff?
I would add that to my motion.
Okay.
All right, I'll add that to my second.
Commissioner Richards.
Yes, point of discussion. We're talking about 1 year. It seems like there's a number of items that could be accomplished in time than that. Any consideration on behalf of the market in regards to reducing that time period?
Mr. Loma.
Certainly it is at the pleasure of the commission. I do believe that given the number of policies that they will need to generate and discuss, possibly amend, and then how they are to be implemented, I think it's reasonable to give the CSD a year to do that.
If I could also clarify, we've been working closely with Mr. Luoma, and we are intending to provide, additional updates within the year, as soon as we adopt a conflict of interest code, as soon as we adopt additional policies regarding finances and expenditure of funds, those will be provided to LAFCO as a courtesy copy to give an update throughout that year. So it's not going to be something where we don't check in for a year and then all of a sudden this comes up. And so our intent really is to maintain open channels of communication and provide additional updates as they are occurring, so that to the extent we even have any questions with respect to the application for latent powers or any other additional issues that arise in the interim, we will be in contact with LAFCO, Mr. Loma, Mr. Boada as necessary.
Commissioner Parks and then Commissioner Rooney, and then I hope we can vote.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to say I appreciate the work of staff, and as Commissioner Rooney was saying, we have a very limited scope actually at LAFCO regarding the MSR, which is to identify where they are within the law and without regarding LAFCO policies and state laws on CSDs in this case. What it doesn't look at are things like we can't make recommendations, as I understand it, other than identify, for example, that they will no longer disperse funds to areas where they're not allowed to disperse funds. We couldn't go further, for example, and say, and they should return those funds that they improperly allocated. That's an example of things that is beyond the scope of LAFCO. And I think there are other items that have been brought to our attention. And I want to thank, Dr. Zeman and others who have, essentially played a role of whistleblower and, helping to identify a lot of information that otherwise would not have been brought forward. And so I just wanted to thank the public for their attention in this. And also, again, appreciate the fact that the CSD now is agreeing with LAFCO what that law is, and hopefully we'll be able to become, in alignment with it.
Thank you. Commissioner Rooney?
Thank you. I just have some clarification questions. So the staff recommendation is that we accept the MSR, and that the sphere of influence review is continued for 1 year. So it's not the MSR that's going to come back in 1 year. It's only the sphere of influence review. Is that accurate?
That's correct.
Okay.
Okay. Because see, I heard what I was hearing in this discussion was that the MSR issues are going to come back in 1 year, and that's not accurate. It would be at the 5-year review, right?
Yeah, it will be a 5-year review, and part of that review will be the extent to which the district addressed all the issues in the MSR. And then so based on that, the commission can determine what to do with the sphere of influence.
Okay, but the MSR is not going to come back for review in 1 year, only the sphere of influence.
That's right.
Commissioner Bill de la Pena?
Thank you. I just had a technical question. Did we close the public hearing before we made the motion?
I don't know that we did. We didn't.
But I also wanted to just say I do thank staff, and I also thank the Bala Canyon Community Services District for working together and addressing some significant issues. And it is my hope that those issues will be resolved over time, and that there will be some sort of perhaps monitor or oversight to ensure that any new policies being implemented are actually being followed. When a community as small as Bell Canyon operates in the way that it does, it's very easy to fall out of the public eye and public scrutiny. So I just want to make sure that we continue this relationship with LAFCO, and that, as you saw, the residents will say something when they see something, and provide and prevent further problems. So I wish you good luck. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, I just asked for a clarification because I didn't see that we had a public hearing per se, Mr. Loma. So can you comment on that before we vote?
I'm sorry, could you repeat the question?
Commissioner Bill de la Pena mentioned that I did not close the public hearing, but I didn't see that on my agenda here. Am I wrong?
I think you can just close the public hearing and proceed.
All right, well, we're going to close the public hearing, folks, and move on. Thank you very much for pointing that out, Commissioners. So we do have a motion and a second. Let's confirm. The motion was by Commissioner Freeman to move the recommended action for a year, and Commissioner Parvin seconded that. So I believe we can vote.
Commissioner Bill de
Beltran?
la Peña. Commissioner Bill de la Peña.
Yes.
Commissioner Freeman.
Yes.
Commissioner Parks.
I'll say yes.
Commissioner Parvin.
Yes.
Commissioner Richards.
Yes.
Commissioner Rooney.
Did you call me?
Yes, Commissioner Rooney.
Yes.
Thank you. Chair Ramirez.
Yes. I see that Commissioner Zaragoza, you're.
Yes, I didn't get to vote, but I just want to thank the LAFCO staff and the Bell Canyon staff for working together on this issue. Very complex issue, but I think hearing what the board said, the president of the board at Bell Canyon and working with our legal and working with our staff and the board, I think we're in the right direction. So I just want to commend staff for excellent work and also for the board working together on this issue. And I want to thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. So we have, the vote has been completed. Is that correct, Ms. Beltran?
Yes, that's correct.
All right. Thank you, everybody. Really great work by everybody. Thank you. So let's go on to item 12, consideration of support for Senate Bill 938, amendment of protest provisions contained in LAFCO law. Mr. Loma.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Okay, this is consideration of support for Senate Bill 938, which is sponsored by Senator Hertzberg. So in 2019, Cal LAFCO convened a working group to evaluate the protest procedures for consolidations and dissolutions of special districts, primarily those actions that are initiated by LAFCO as opposed to an outside agency. The purpose was to respond to a Little Hoover Commission 2017 report that concluded that the existing provisions in LAFCO law often deter LAFCOs for pursuing dissolutions of poorly performing special districts. These are special districts that are so problematic that they should be dissolved. So the working group, it consisted of several stakeholders. It had representatives from the California Special Districts Association, the California State Association of Counties, the League of California Cities, the Assembly Local Government Committee, State Government and Finance Committee, and then there were multiple LAFCO EOs, including myself. So the working group met several times, both in person and virtually over these 3 years. Things were disrupted due to the pandemic. But we determined that there needed to be changes made to the protest proceedings contained in LAFCO law. One was that obsolete provisions should be removed. And this was accomplished last year with the Assembly Bill 1581, which was, if I recall correctly, just the omnibus bill. It was non-controversial, straightforward removal of obsolete provisions. But then the working group also determined that the protest thresholds that are currently found in multiple code sections spread throughout the protest proceedings section should be consolidated into a single new section, just for ease. And the third was that a process should be developed that allows for the protest threshold for LAFCO-initiated dissolutions of poorly performing districts to be increased from 10% to 25%. This is consistent with non-LAFCO-initiated dissolutions. So what are thresholds? A threshold is the percentage of property owners or registered voters who file written protest that qualifies the dissolution to be subject to a special election. So currently, if LAFCO initiates a dissolution, the protest provision is 10%. And this prevents many LAFCOs from pursuing that because the threshold is so low. And what's interesting is, as I mentioned, if a county or another special district pursues the dissolution of a district, it's subject to a 25% threshold. So LAFCO is held to a higher standard. So what does Senate Bill 938 propose to do? Well, it first proposes to consolidate the protest thresholds found in multiple code sections into a new chapter, which is Chapter 4.5 of LAFCO law. But it makes no changes to those thresholds. It really is just a consolidation of existing thresholds into a single chapter. And this proposal is shown in the attached proposed bill to your staff report. What isn't in that proposed staff report, or the proposed bill attached to the staff report just yet, is a process that allows for LAFCO to initiate the dissolution of a poorly performing district subject to a 25% threshold for the protest. The senator does plan on introducing this and amending the bill, and actually we are currently reviewing the language to be included. So regarding this new process, this is the process that the working group has committed to, and this is the process that that the Senator Hertzberg will be amending the Senate bill with. So step one in this process is that LAFCO must prepare and accept a municipal service review at a 21-day notice public hearing that finds one or more of the following. Number one is that the agency, the district in this case, has one or more documented chronic service provision deficiencies, and its board or management is not actively engaged in efforts to remediate the documented service deficiencies. Two, the agency spent public funds in an unlawful or reckless manner and has not taken any action to prevent similar future spending. Three, the agency has consistently shown willful neglect by failing to consistently adhere to the California Public Records Act and other public disclosure laws that the agency is subject to. The agency has failed to meet the minimum number of times required in its governing act in the prior calendar year and has taken no action to remediate the failures to meet. And lastly, the agency has consistently failed to perform timely audits in the prior 3 years or failed to meet minimum financial requirements under the government code over the prior 5 years. Or the agency's recent annual audits show chronic issues with the agency's fiscal controls, and the agency has taken no action to remediate the issues. After accepting that MSR, step two, LAFCO would adopt what's called a resolution of intent. This is a new term to initiate dissolution of the district. Now, this resolution of intent doesn't actually initiate the dissolution process. It's merely an indication that the commission will if certain criteria are met. So this resolution of intent must be adopted at a notice public hearing. It must identify a remediation period of no less than 12 months during which the district may resolve the issues identified in the MSR. And then the district is to provide LAFCO with a progress report halfway through the remediation period. And I just want to say that this 12-month remediation period is based on how the commission handled the latest sphere of influence review and update for the Piru Public Cemetery District, in which the MSR identified a number of deficiencies that the commission considered, but then they were given 12 months to remediate those deficiencies, which they did. And this formed the basis of this part of the process. And then step three, at the end of that remediation period, again, at the third publicly noticed hearing, if the district has adequately addressed the issues, LAFCO is to rescind the resolution to initiate dissolution and no further action is necessary. If the district has not addressed these issues identified in the MSR, then LAFCO is to adopt a resolution to actually initiate the dissolution and then commence protest proceedings thereafter. The minimum period of protest is 60 days. It's currently a minimum of 30 days, but this is increased to a minimum of 60 days. And when all of these steps have been followed, the protest threshold will be increased from 10 to 25%. So as I said, that's not currently in the bill, but it will be in the proposed bill in the very near future. So the recommendation is that the commission authorize the chair to sign a letter, which is attachment 1 to the staff report, on behalf of the commission to Senator Hertzberg in support of SB 938. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Questions? Commissioner Rooney. Yes.
Okay, thanks. So I know that the California Special District Association has issued a support in concept of this legislation. I just want to say that I'm not sure how much in depth the Ventura County Special District Association has talked about this and about the threshold. So there could be a potential issue of raising the threshold for protesting for the LAFCO initiated dissolution of a special district, and a concern that a 25% protest threshold may be too high and effectively removing the ability for ratepayers to have a voice in these type of dissolutions. So, you know, I put that out there, you know, as a consideration. You know, I don't know if CSDA has changed the support in concept to support legislation. So I don't know if you can answer that question, Mr. Loma, if the CSDA has changed their position from support in concept.
I'm not aware of any changes.
I will say at the last CSDA legislative meeting 2 weeks ago, it was a support position.
Other questions from commissioners? What's the pleasure of the commission? I'll entertain a motion.
I would move to support the recommendation.
And I'll second.
Oh, okay.
Who was the second? Was that Commissioner Bill De La Pena? And we had no members of the public wishing to speak, as far as I can tell. Correct, Ms. Beltran?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, so we can vote now. Thank you.
Commissioner Bill De La Pena,
Yes.
Commissioner Freeman, Commissioner Freeman?
Yes.
Thank you. Commissioner Parks,
Yes.
Commissioner Parvin,
Yes.
Commissioner Richards,
Yes.
Commissioner Rooney,
Yes.
Chair Ramirez.
Yes. Thank you. So I think that was unanimous, sounded like. Okay, let's go on to our executive officers report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So the anticipated future agenda items, that's just a receive and file. It's just informational only. Regarding other matters, at this time, well, the Board of Supervisors had considered changing virtual meetings to include some type of hybrid beginning in late April. From your staff's standpoint, LAFCO staff, we want to wait to see how the Board of Supervisors does that before the commission makes any changes. We don't want to proceed changes. We want to see how it works out with the board. So most likely the April LAFCO meeting will stay virtual. However, in May, it might change to some hybrid type of meeting, but of course I will consult with the chair and our vice chair before making any changes. And then regarding the Cal LAFCO staff workshop, that was scheduled for later this month. However, due to a limited number of people signing up, it was canceled. So there will be no staff workshop this year. The next Cal LAFCO event will be hopefully the annual conference in the fall. And that concludes my report.
Thank you very much. Commissioners, comments or questions for Mr. Loma? And I see Commissioner Rooney, you put your hand up again, right?
I did. Yeah, thank you. So my comment goes to the way that we at LAFCO are posting the MSRs and any updates to that. And I'd like for consideration because, you know, frankly, I was confused as to when the MSRs had been updated and things like that. So I went to the LAFCO website and clicked on the boundary and sphere of influence maps and MSRs. And let me take Oxnard Harbor District for a minute here. So I click on that and it shows that the MSR is from 2007, wherein in actuality, it has already been updated. So the confusing part here is that it appears that we were behind on reviewing MSRs when in actuality we were not. And so if you click on the MSR, it shows that it's accepted in September of 2007. But if you go back to the work plan, it shows that it was actually reviewed in 2017. So I guess my way to eliminate some confusion here is that if we've done a review of the MSR, then is there a way that we can post that this is the date it was reviewed and approved? If there was no modifications or whatever, it wouldn't be posted on the website. But to have a way on the actual MSR document that shows reviewed whatever date in the past that it was, that we noted on that MSR, so somebody can actually find when it was really updated, because you have to go to the work plan to find the actual date, which I'm not sure everybody would, right? So it gives, it tells there on the work plan when it was reviewed and then the most recent review. So you see what I mean? I think that just for clarification and that we're actually doing the work, because I started looking at this and I'm like, oh my gosh, we haven't reviewed this when we really did, because the actual document doesn't show a review date on that.
It would seem that this is an issue could be easily taken care of. I always wonder, we have a very small staff, and if we have all the capacity to do things in a timely manner, and always a concern I have everywhere in the county. Sometimes people say, oh yeah, everything's great. We have enough staff and capacity. And that's what they say publicly, and privately they say, we're pulling our hair out. So I'll look for staff to let us know how soon they can fix that sort of thing. It should be relatively.
Yeah, to provide a little bit of explanation. The municipal service reviews are accepted one time. The municipal service reviews aren't reviewed every 5 years. The sphere of influence is. So, and a sphere of influence review does not require an update to the municipal service review. So a municipal service review that was prepared in 2007, such as the Harbor District, if staff does not see any need to change or update a municipal service review at the periodic 5-year sphere of influence reviews, then we don't. They just stand as it is. We have been taking the approach that, yes, some of these are outdated, so we begin a process to update them, but that means it's a whole new independent municipal service review that will be brought to the commission for acceptance. It's interesting that this is brought up now because we are in the process. We realize that going to the website and bringing up a municipal service review, you do not see the subsequent actions that the commission has taken in reviewing the sphere of influence over the next 5 years or 10 years. So we have been slowly implementing a new process whereby the commission is taking a formal position, adopting a resolution when they review the sphere of influence, making the determinations that it stays as is, and with the intent of posting that on the website. So there is a clear record of what's been going on as far as municipal service reviews and then subsequent actions regarding the spheres of influence. So that is a work in process.
Thank you very much. Okay, other commissioners, any comments? I'll only say yes, the board is looking at, and Supervisor Parks and I are involved in the public discussion of that. But I'd like everybody to pay attention because the COVID is starting to surge again in China and in Europe. And, we don't want to let our guard down, especially those of us who might be more vulnerable around more vulnerable people. So I'll just say, stay tuned and stay safe. Any other comments from members of the commission? Well, I think we might be finished. So I think I don't need a motion to adjourn, do I? Mr. Loma?
You do not.
Okay. All right, everybody. Have a great week, and we'll see you soon, either in person or right here on the computer. Take care, everybody.
Thank you.
Take care.